I'm going to share that.
Okay. Shoot.
Notes. Emails of people.
Yeah, good. Maybe one more minute. What's the time now? It is 12:10.
Just.
Yeah, 12:11. Yeah. Not sure if there's anyone else going to join. Great. Well, we'll just carry on then, and we'll start the presentation. So good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for attending. So some more audience. I've got a presentation. It's about 10 slides. So I was going to initially just work through that presentation, and then happy to take questions after, if that works for everyone. It might be you have some questions, and I answer them as we work through the presentation. So let's start. And we shall, and I shall. I've lost my mouse. There's the mouse. Oh, it doesn't. Oh, it's sticky, isn't it? I can.
You might be able to look far away.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just click the down button, and we'll see if that works. So, right. Okay. Great. So I've going to cover these three topics and just expand a bit upon them. So most of the conversation was really around the shared ministry budget, what it is, how it's calculated, and also best to give you a sort of step back a bit and look at the high level and talk to you a bit about the funding model that we use in the Synod here around income expenses, and you'll then get a view of why the shared ministry budget, where it feeds into that, and why it's an important element of our budget. And I've also got a couple of slides just to talk about some other budget items, because it seems quite relevant, particularly for parishes as they start to plan and think about planning for their 2026 budget. Some things that they may need to consider and the cathedral team as we work through for the next 2 years planning cycle. So those are the three topics we'll cover. So I've got a couple of slides on really just the funding model, and then we'll move into the shared ministry budget. So the funding model, so this is looking at from a Synod perspective. We have two major sources of income, so I've got them in a pie chart there. As you can see, investment income and shared ministry budget. And the investment income is that big blue slice of the pie. Represents around about 59% of our revenue from a diocese point of view. And you can then see also quite a big element, which is the shared ministry budget, represents just over a third. So those two elements make up the bulk of our income that we receive into Synod. And you'll see some other smaller elements, some external funding, some bank interests, and some other. But those two really make up the bulk. And this budget for this year, 2025, we have a budget revenue of 3.4 million. And so what do we use that income for? Where is it allocated? The next slide will then show you where it's allocated. And you see it's slightly broken into slightly bigger pieces, smaller pieces, as opposed to the two big elements in income. It's shared across probably three major areas, which is the diocesan salaries. And included in the salaries there, we also include, we pay for the salaries for any curacies. That gets covered by the diocese. And we pay for significant training elements for anyone who is sort of training for ministry. The second biggest element that, in terms of our expenses, is what, in terms of the investment income. Obviously, some of that investment income relates to parishes because they've invested through the investment portfolio that we use with RBC, and they invest through the DCIF, the Diocesan Consolidated Investment Fund. we get RBC to manage that as professional fund managers, and they manage that and then obviously give us on a regular basis income and return. And then we then repay that out to parishes. So you can see 21% of our expenses for the year will be essentially a payout to the parishes for holding that investment with the DCIF, and we then aggregating them interest. And we do that twice yearly, generally in June and December. And the third biggest element, chunk of that pie, is then what we then use from all of that income in terms of supporting broadly the parishes, in terms of their mission ministry of the diocese. So that's where we will be paying out grants to various parishes, grants to the wider community, etc. And as a point of note, our budget expenditure for 2025 is 3.6 million. Our income is only 3.4. So actually, we were budgeting for a small deficit of about 220,000. I'm hoping that we'll do better than that actually, because I think our investment income, our investment returns will probably be a bit stronger than I'm anticipating. I've got a call with our fund manager today actually for him to give me an idea of where we might turn out for the year. So that's really the funding model, and you can see within those funding models the importance of shared ministry budget. It's around about a third of our income. As a comparison, I did do a comparison against our nearest neighbour, Nova Scotia, and actually their shared ministry budget equivalent actually is a higher value than ours. I think theirs is more like 50%. So actually they don't rely as much on their investment portfolio as we are. So maybe that we're slightly more blessed with having perhaps a stronger investment portfolio, which gives us additional return and perhaps helps alleviate some of that pressure from parishes to pay shared ministry budget. But as you can see, it is an important element for the diocese. And to my mind, I think in shared ministry budget is where, as parishes, you are recognising that we are essentially one body, Anglican diocese here, and we are one body, and you have an obligation to help the diocese and synod in achieving our missions and objectives. So what is shared ministry budget? Firstly, we'll just talk a bit about where we've been and how we calculate it. So it's calculated on the percent of your operating turnover. It's done, as you can see in that fourth bullet point. We levy it based on how much income you tell us that you have received that can be levied on operational income. And so if you're a parish that has less than $50,000 of operational income, then we'll only levy you at the 9% threshold. If you have between 50 and 100,000, we'll then take the next marginal rate and levy that, and so on. And if you earn more than 100,000, then you can see that the third category will take a levy. So the levies being 9, 14, and 18. And as you can see in those notes, predominantly, half of our parishes earn more than $100,000 a year, and then the other half are between the 50 or under 100. So, but you can see for those half of the parishes, when you're earning more than 100,000, yes, a significant amount more revenue comes to us as shared ministry. So we're trying to say this is a fair and equitable way of levying all of the parishes, the cathedral, but that if you earn more income, you do pay more into that shared ministry budget. And we take not just what you have done last year, but we look at averaging over the last 3 years. So the calculation for 2026, which we've just issued, we'll be looking at what you told us were your returns in 22, 23, and 24, so those years. So we take that, we average those over the last 3 years. So if you have 1 year which had exceptionally good income for some reason, it's not going to mean you're going to take all of that and paying in 1 year. It's an averaging effect. And we don't take all of your income. There's certain income we say, we won't levy, and that will be things that I've got on the further table. so that you don't feel that we're going to penalise you if you have certain income that actually is not operational and is a one-off. Often these one-off items of income that you might receive, we won't levy you on that. And how's it been over the last number of years? Well, in terms of our current funding, we were through that sort of pandemic level area, 21, 23, we were averaging about 93%. And in 2024, it was almost like as we got out of that cycle, particularly that lockdown and the pandemic, we could see that actually continuing with the same methodology, we achieved a 97% recovery. And so far this year, we're about 94. So we're in the high 90s. And that gives me quite a lot of confidence that actually it feels like the model that we're using and the calculation and methodology is probably okay. I know there will be parishes who do struggle and find it financially quite difficult. There are methods and mechanisms that we can help you on that. But to my mind, it seems to be that it's reasonably equitable and say the bulk of the parishes are able to pay it. You know, affordability does come into it, but they are obviously recognising their obligation to the diocese and are paying that. So if we go into what, I might just hide that if I can. Oh, well, there we go. The mouse is a little bit. So how do we calculate shared ministry budget and what elements are included and excluded? So you've got that table on the right hand side, essentially all of those. So when we request you submit a financial return to us, we've done it on the last couple of years on something called Microsoft Forms. So you submit into a portal and you have these various categories that you will allocate your income into. And so the big categories will obviously be things like the envelope offerings, your fundraising, open offerings, investment income. And what we just need to highlight really on investment income is if we are paying you out that interest, some of that interest that we pay out to you will be on some of your restricted funds. We won't necessarily know what those restrictions are because that should be held within the parish. So you do need to be mindful that when we give you that interest income, don't always necessarily declare it as operational income because some of it may well be restricted. For example, cemetery funds, you probably won't be able to use interest that you have on funds or trusts that you have created for cemeteries operationally because they are restricted to the purpose of that cemetery. So the treasurer certainly just need to be mindful that when we tell you what your investment income is and we break that down by all the trusts and funds that you have told us you have, you can allocate some of that income as operational investment income and some of it is non-operational. That's quite an important distinction. I'm not necessarily clear how many of the parishes are doing that, but I have to rely on what you tell me. And the key things that we do include will be things like anything that we give you in terms of grants, any other restricted income, any one-off things like bequests, and any other items that may well be that you don't use for operational purposes. So there's a bunch you can see we exclude. Some of the donations from other sources, restricted income, flow throughs. If you get money that you've been given into you, but you have to pay out, we don't include that. When you take money out of some of your other funds, we don't include that because that's not really income. So there's a bunch you can see we exclude. So we're only taking really mainly, your offerings, your fundraising, your investment income to calculate that shared ministry budget. And just as we have issued, because we've done the 2026 calculation for the shared ministry assessment, and we issued that, I think it was a week and a half ago. A quick headline is it looks like the total ask has gone up slightly from just over 1.2 million to 1.245. Obviously, the way we work is we add in a new year. So the new year added in was your 2024 year, and we drop off the 2021. So what I'm seeing anecdotally is that the impact of those two pandemic years, 2021, where you would have had probably quite a lot of reduced income. Churches were closed, you couldn't do fundraising and other activities. They've now seem to have dropped off. And so what I'm seeing anecdotally is there has been an increase in fundraising, obviously because you can now do that, and there has been an increase in other activities generating income. And that's possibly what I see is driving the slight increase. What I'm seeing probably from open offerings and envelope offerings is that's probably been held at the level that has happened in certainly 22, 23. So not necessarily any big increases. And as a note to say, so far, actually, I've just done another update to August. Yeah, we're about collecting about 94%. So that is a pretty good collection, and sort of gives me confidence that for this year we'll get close to our budget expectation for shared ministry. And I might just pause there for the moment in case people have some questions, because that's really the element on shared ministry budget per se.
Hold on the picture again.
Great. That one there.
Or two.
So if anyone online has a comment, we can answer that now. If not, I'll continue.
I think I have a question. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. The Parish of Kent recently had a fundraiser to raise funds for the replacement of a retaining wall. I'm just wondering how those funds would be classified. Is that operational and therefore should be included in this calculation in the coming years, or is that something separate?
That feels like that's something separate, because it feels like you're going to restrict that income for a specific reason, i.e. to repair a retaining wall.
Yeah.
And in other words, if that income comes in, I guess you can't use it to pay for your electricity, can you?
Right.
So I think for me that answers your question, that sounds like it's restricted, so it should not be included in this calculation.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. It's just, a lot of the folks in the Parish of Kent, like there's sort of like this attitude that if it needs to be done, then it's operational. Like if it's like, and sometimes I don't know how to persuade them otherwise.
Yeah.
That. Yeah, so I struggle with sort of some of those distinctions, because I think my people do, and because they're like, oh no, this is operational. This is, for the continued operation of our parish. So it's it's interesting sometimes.
Yeah, that's an interesting one. I mean, I think it was. Yeah, I'd be saying if it was, say, a replacement of a boiler or an oil tank, you need that to function. That feels more like operational. If it's a replacement of a church steeple, that feels more like a capital program.
Yeah.
The retaining wall feels like, to me, it sits on that grade, on that fence line of actually, is that going to stop you, conducting your services? Well, it could do, I suppose, if the wall falls onto the church or something. It might not. Yeah, it feels to me that that's probably less operational than if you wanted to install, you had to replace your oil tank or your boiler because they've gone past their life. You need those to function as a either in the church or the hall, because they give you that heat or light or power, whatever.
Yeah.
It's a good question. I mean, I think.
No, thank you. You did provide some clarity. Thank you for the clarity around this particular issue. I think for some parishes, I think there is sort of there's a bit of a fog around
Yeah.
what's operational and what's not.
Yeah. Well, to my mind, anything operational is anything that's supporting the mission and ministry of the parish, and you know that income that you're receiving over the plate or the plate offerings, I expect mostly is going into those operational elements.
Yeah.
I expect in most cases in the parish, the biggest operational cost will be clergy lay salaries.
Mm-hmm.
And then underneath that, you're then going to have probably utilities and maybe some sort of scheduled maintenance.
Mm-hmm.
What we're seeing probably a lot of the times is because parishes are so stretched for cash, perhaps what they're not able to do is say some of that operational income we can put it aside for maintenance or scheduled maintenance works. So you don't have a lot of them don't have that ability. So, for example, all of a sudden, you know, you've got to replace your roof. You haven't got funds set aside. You haven't been able to build up funds to set aside to replace the roof or do some repainting because you've just been almost hand to mouth type of operating in some cases.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Might it help to, I'm in the corner here. Might it help to have a little further information in the annual return form
We could do, couldn't we?
to define that a
Why
little
don't we
better?
look
So
at that?
maybe
Yeah.
notes,
Yeah.
Yeah, like even something like just what you said a moment ago, that, you know, perhaps scheduled maintenance is operational, but if it's maintenance that is, you know, that becomes apparent or
Yeah.
you know, needs to be done urgently, you know, that's not perhaps operational. Like that's
And maybe it should have been operational, but you've never been able to create a schedule to you know, I almost like to make it more preventative. You know,
mm-hmm.
if
Mm-hmm.
if you knew that you could repaint your roof and that would give you another 10 years life, and you hadn't had the money, and all of a sudden you've done it, and then the roof fails, then you're into a bigger capital program because you've not been able to do, you know, some of that scheduled maintenance.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we'll expand a bit of that in for next year. That's a useful comment for us. Okay. Well, no further questions. We'll move on to just to say that a lot of the parishes and I guess the cathedral and we are in the diocese are thinking about the budget for next year. We, in terms of our timeline, we need to get the budget approved in council end of November, and backing that back, we will be looking to approve our budget at our next finance committee meeting, which is coming up in 20th of November, I think it is. And so we're quite a way on in terms of what we as a synod and diocese need to look at for 2026. Some things that we've already had to consider and have considered in our budget, which certainly you will need to think about, will be salary costs. Obviously, that's probably the biggest element. And to make sure you factor these into your calculations for next year, the HR committee have recommended, and that's now been approved, that we look at giving a cost of living increase on all clergy of 2%, and that's applied onto the minimum stipend scale. And that scale document is on our website, and you'll see it's based on scaling based on the number of years service clergy have, and there's a threshold on that. So we'll be looking to apply that 2%, and certainly the recommendation is you as parishes need to ensure that your clergy are paid at that minimum scale. Just to be mindful that that's not viewed for us as a pay rise, it's purely a cost of living indexation. If you wish to pay your clergy more, you're free to do so. We encourage that. I think a lot of the parishes aren't able to necessarily look at doing that because of perhaps financial constraints. but there is that option. But so that will be something that will impact your budgets next year. And also, excuse me, that 2% will cost of living allowance will also be added onto any housing allowances that are paid out to clergy. And the third element that the HR committee recommended and was endorsed was to increase the car allowance to clergy from current level 4,800 per annum to 5,400. There'd been a bit of work done over the last couple of years where it was realised that that rate had not increased for a number of years and is significantly out of line with the market in terms of particularly replacement car costs, which have increased over the years. So there's a process in place to just align that to more local market values that we're seeing. And same for any lay costs, recommended the cost of living allowance is 2% on the minimum. There is a minimum New Brunswick labour rate at the moment, which is at 15.65, and that did increase last April. I think it went up by 35 cents, as I say there. So we won't know that until next year, but there probably will be an expectation from the Brunswick Labour Council that there will be probably a review of that, and that will increase sometime in April next year. I don't know that. And for what I see that we go through in terms of payroll, everyone's certainly on that, paying that at least that minimum, if not slightly more for some of their hourly rates, which is fine. So anything else? Yes, one I did really need to highlight was really health benefits. We have had a new provider, Blue Cross Native Aid. We've been with them 2 years. One of the requirements when we moved to them is that we asked them to keep all the current benefits that we previously had. They said they would do that, and they fixed the premium for 2 years, and that 2-year cycle is now coming up to an end at the end of this year. And partway through last year, they came to us and said, it's looking like we probably will have to increase the base premium rates. And we had a review with them a week ago. And the third bullet point was what's driving some of that is that they said over this sort of 18, 20 months, we know your claims ratio on your dental plan is 115%, and on the healthcare 107. So in other words, every dollar we putting in, they're paying out $1.15 on the dental and $1.07 on health. So that's not sustainable for them. As a guide, they generally work to a rate of something like 85 to 86 cents in the dollars paid out. The rest of that then becomes sort of, I guess, their profit. So they've already said if we were to allocate what we should recover, it would likely be 33% on base premiums. They are a non-profit corporation as opposed to a profit corporation, and they take a longer term view. So they were willing to say we would like that at least we put an increase of 15% on base premiums. So that will impact the diocese. In terms of what we pay, you can see on that fourth bullet point, quite a lot of the premium we pay. So in clergy, we pay 2/3 of that premium, and obviously parishes pay the other third. For lay, it's 50-50, and for retirees, we pay 3/4 of that benefit. So there will be an implication for certainly parishes and retirees that there will be an increase in what we will apportion to you, or we will ask to recover from the retirees. And we felt that was a good halfway negotiation point, 15%. It's likely that the following year it might go up again, but I wouldn't have thought it'd buy as much. We think in terms of the dental plan, everyone made the opportunity to have, or where they could, certainly have as much they could done on dental. We might look at some elements of that because we have other means of funding some of that. We have some other funds that we could perhaps use. So we're expecting that we should get that down to under the 100% ratio that's showing there. So something to just feed back, and I will feed that back over the next few weeks when I perhaps put a budget letter out to all the parishes and copying the clergy and treasurers. And the final one, which we tends to come out quite late, is our insurance. We have asked where we can all the parishes just to currently review your insurance, make sure you've got all the properties or contents insured at appropriate level. If you feel that you'd like to make an adjustment, certainly liaise with our broker, which is Marsh McClellan. They are very responsive to that. I'm not getting an indication yet, except probably what will happen is there'll be some sort of indexation based on inflation, I expect, certainly on properties. We managed to hold last year a lot of the other elements, such as public liability contents at the level that it was held at the previous year. So I'll get a better feel of that in the next month. It tends to come out a little bit late. The actuaries tend to pour over some numbers, and I think they need as much current information before they give us the new year's likely premium. And I would just go back to one final thing is that one of the elements when we do calculate shared ministry budget is there is an opportunity where parishes feel that is going to be financially a stretch. You can request some relief, a reduction. There's a form that you fill out on the website. You just need to search for request for a reduction to shared ministry or words to that effect, and it will bring up a link. You'll open a link. It will be a 2-page document which you'll fill out, and that's really to just request temporary reduction. It's not a permanent reduction request. It's a temporary to help you, and it might be temporary for that year because you've had some extraordinary expenses that you think you're going to incur or can't cover. And one of the things, the steps we do ask you to consider is what steps can you take to remedy that financial situation so that it improves for perhaps the following year when you are able to achieve that request that we've asked. Point to note, we've been communicating that is if we can, we'd like to have those requests in by the 14th of November, which is partly the reason why we issued the shared ministry assessment quite early this year, because I'm keen to then get those requests in so that we can then discuss them in finance and get them approved before the start of the financial year. And that may be achievable for some parishes. I expect some parishes are still figuring out what their budget's going to look like for next year and may not get to that. But we have taken requests after that date. It was for me trying to get a sense of how many parishes might want to request that request and to get them approved. So we then set up to make sure that come the 1st of January, we are asking for the correct amount, the amount that might be less on a relief. Okay, that's really the end of my presentation. I'm just going to double check nothing else. No, that was it. So if there are any other questions, yeah, raise your hand or speak out. That's nothing else from the room. Seem to have gone through that quite.
I'm glad you're doing all this and not me.
Yeah. Okay, well, we've been recording this, so for others who are unable to attend, we'll certainly alert them that it's been recorded and they can dip into it at their convenience.
So where will it be available in a recorded form?
It's on the actual event page because that keeps renewing. Right. So it seemed to be, or I'll have a link to a page of the recordings, or it's in a YouTube. It's in our Synod YouTube playlist.
Okay. Yeah.
And we're putting highlights of the last commons there for short term.
Okay.
So, and next month will be Sean talking about his role as director of mission and ministry, given the newness of his role. So that hopefully some interest in that.
Good. Okay.
And we're
Thank-
working on next year's schedule. So, soon. Yes.
Thank you, Cheryl.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for your time and coming in to listen to that. I hope you get something out of it, and I wish you have a pleasant afternoon the rest of the day.
Thank you.
Thanks, Bill.
You're welcome. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Hey.